I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. What do you do if you're Donald Trump and your RICO criminal co-defendant in Fulton County, Georgia, just pled guilty and has offered a proffer session to testify against you? Well, if you're Donald Trump and you lie about everything, why not just lie again and claim that your lawyer wasn't your lawyer and that you don't even know who she is? That's exactly what Donald Trump is doing, as he is clearly in a panic after his co-defendant in the Georgia RICO case, Sidney Powell, who also happens to be his lawyer, pled guilty and entered into a proffer session where she's agreed to cooperate against Donald Trump and the other co-defendants in the criminal RICO case. Here's what Donald Trump posted a little bit ago, where he says he doesn't even know who Sidney Powell's not his lawyer. She was never representing him. I'm going to show you what Donald Trump posted. And then, of course, this is the MeidasTouch Network, so we come with receipts, and we will show you all the times where she was representing herself as Donald Trump's lawyer, where Donald Trump called her his lawyer, where Rudy Giuliani called her a senior lawyer on the legal team for the campaign and for Donald Trump individually, and where Donald Trump wanted to appoint Sidney Powell as a special counsel to seize voting machines, right? The way, let's say, special counsel Jack Smith was appointed special counsel status, Donald Trump tried to make Sidney Powell a special counsel to seize voting machines. Well, here's what Donald Trump's panic post on his social media platform stated. Sidney Powell was one of millions and millions of people who thought, and an ever-increasing number still think correctly, that the 2020 presidential election was, and he puts this in caps, rigged and stolen, and our country is being absolutely destroyed because of it, exclamation point. Despite the fake news reports to the contrary, and without even reaching out to ask the Trump campaign, Miss Powell was not, and he puts this in caps, not my attorney and never was. In fact, she would have been conflicted. Miss Powell did a valiant job of representing a very unfairly treated and governmentally abused General Mike Flynn, but to no avail. His prosecution, despite the facts, was ruthless. He was an innocent man, much like many other innocent people who are being persecuted by this now fascist government of ours, and I was honored to give him a full pardon. And look, if you still have any friends who are MAGA, who are on the fence about where they're going to vote, share this video with them, because the lie is just so blatant at this point. Let's pull out the receipts, shall we? Where would we get this idea that Sidney Powell was Donald Trump's lawyer? Well, maybe from you, Donald Trump, because here is what was posted at 7:11 p.m. on November 14th, 2020. Here's what Trump said. I look forward to Mayor Giuliani spearheading the legal effort to defend our right to free and fair elections. Rudy Giuliani, Joseph De Genova, Victoria Tsonsing, Sidney Powell, and Jenna Ellis. A truly great team added to our other wonderful lawyers and representatives. Our wonderful lawyers and representatives spearheading the legal efforts. Giuliani and Sidney Powell. This is what Donald Trump posted on November 14th of 2020. And of course, shortly thereafter, on November 19th of 2020, there was a press conference that was held where Rudy Giuliani introduced Sidney Powell as a senior member of the legal team for Donald Trump individually, as well as for the Trump campaign. And then Sidney Powell spoke at that press conference on November 19th, 2020, and proceeded to spread all of the election lies about Hugo Chavez stealing voting machines and hacking the algorithm and communists and all these things. And that's why Donald Trump lost, and spreading the big lie. Remember this press conference? Well, we've got the tapes. Play the clip.
Thank you very much for coming. This is representative of our legal team. We're representing President Trump, and we're representing the Trump campaign. when I finish, Sidney Powell and then Jenna Ellis will follow me, and we will present in brief the evidence that we've collected over the last, I guess it is 2 weeks. Also, Joseph DeGenever, Victoria Tenzing are here with me. There are a lot more lawyers working on this, but we're the senior lawyers, and Boris Epstein.
What we are really dealing with here and uncovering more by the day is the massive influence of communist money through Venezuela, Cuba, and likely China in the interference with our elections here in the United States. The Dominion voting systems, the Smartmatic technology software, and the software that goes in other computerized voting systems here as well, not just Dominion, were created in Venezuela at the direction of Hugo Chavez to make sure he never lost an election after one constitutional referendum came out the way he did not want it to come out.
And then, of course, there was the January 6th committee, because not only did Donald Trump make Sidney Powell his lawyer for purposes of spreading the big lie, as you just saw, but then in December of 2020, Donald Trump tried to make Sidney Powell a special counsel to seize voting machines. So first and foremost, let's listen to what Sidney Powell had to say about that with her testimony before the January 6th committee. Remember when we broadcast that here on the MeidasTouch Network? Play the clip.
As to promise the job of special counsel to now discredited former Trump campaign lawyer Sidney Powell at a late-night meeting on December 18th.
I know on Friday he had asked me to be special counsel to address the election issues and to collect evidence, and he was extremely frustrated with the lack of, I would call it, law enforcement by any of the government agencies that are supposed to act to protect the rule of law in our republic.
And here is another clip of the January 6th committee that involves other members who were in the White House, individuals who were Donald Trump's lawyers, who called Sidney Powell and Giuliani team crazy. People like Pat Cipollone, one of Donald Trump's White House lawyers, Eric Hirschman, and others. There were some lawyers in the White House who said that, look, we were not going along with the big lie. We knew that Donald Trump and Sidney Powell and Giuliani and others were violating the law. Remember this from the January 6th committee? Play the clip.
The strong rejection of the Attorney General and the White House counsel of these claims did not stop the president from trying to press them in public. But that's not all he did. Indeed, as you'll see in this clip, the president asked Attorney General Bill Barr to have the Department of Justice seize voting machines in the states.
My recollection is the president said something like, well, we could get to the bottom. Some people say we could get to the bottom of this if the department seized the machines. It was a typical way of raising a point. And I said, absolutely not. There's no probable cause, and I'm not going to seize any machines. And that was that. Yeah.
But this wasn't the end of the matter. On the evening of December 18th, 2020, Sidney Powell, General Michael Flynn, and others entered the White House for an unplanned meeting with the president, the meeting that would last multiple hours and become hot-blooded and contentious. The executive order behind me on the screen was drafted on December the 16th, just 2 days after the Electoral College vote, by several of the president's outside advisors over a luncheon at the Trump International Hotel. As you can see here, this proposed order directs the Secretary of Defense to seize voting machines, quote, effective immediately, but it goes even further than that. Under the order, President Trump would appoint a special counsel with the power to seize machines and then charge people with crimes with all resources necessary to carry out her duties. The specific plan was to name Sidney Powell as special counsel, The Trump lawyer who had spent the post-election period making outlandish claims about Venezuelan and Chinese interference in the election, among others. Here's what White House counsel Pat Cipollone had to say about Sidney Powell's qualifications to take on such expansive authority.
I don't think Sidney Powell would say that I thought it was a good idea to appoint her special counsel. I was vehemently opposed. I didn't think she should be appointed to anything.
Sidney Powell told the president that these steps were justified because of her evidence of foreign interference in the 2020 election. However, as we've seen, Trump's allies had no such evidence and, of course, no legal authority for the federal government to seize state voting machines. Here's Mr. Cipollone again denouncing Sidney Powell's terrible idea.
There was a real question in my mind and a real concern, particularly after the Attorney General had reached the conclusion that there wasn't sufficient election fraud to change the outcome of the election. When other people kept suggesting that there was, the answer is, what is it? And at some point, you have to put up or shut up. That was my view.
Why was this, on a broader scale, a bad idea for the country?
To have the federal government seize voting machines, that's a terrible idea for the country. That's not how we do things in the United States. There's no legal authority to do that. And there is a way to contest elections, that happens all the time. But the idea that the federal government could come in and seize election machines, I don't understand why we even have to tell you why that's a bad idea for the country. It's a terrible idea.
So now that Sidney Powell has pled guilty, Donald Trump says, I don't even know who she is. She was just one of millions of people. And by the way, my own view about what Donald Trump's saying there is also, I think it's a form of witness tampering. Recall that Sidney Powell is a witness against Donald Trump in Fulton County, Georgia. Sidney Powell is a witness against Donald Trump in the special counsel Jack Smith case. And I think it also is witness tampering to all of the other witnesses as Donald Trump continues to go after and mention witnesses by name, knowing that that's going to have an effect on them. And I'll just show you this right here. This is Sidney Powell earlier last week, where she pled guilty to 6 counts in connection with trying to overthrow the 2020 election. Play the clip.
All right, Ms. Powell, I just have a few questions for you. Do you understand the nature of the charges that have been reaccused and that you would be pleading guilty to today?
I do, sir.
And you've heard all the rights that the state has gone through that you would waive by going forward with this plea. Do you still wish to waive those rights?
I do.
And are you pleading guilty today because you agree that there is a sufficient factual basis, that there are enough facts that support this plea of guilty?
I do.
Mr. Rafferty, are you satisfied your client is competent in understanding that the plea is voluntary and that there is a sufficient factual basis for entering this plea?
Yes, Your Honor.
I agree and find that there is a sufficient factual basis, and I find this plea of guilty to be knowingly, voluntarily, and intelligently entered. There's been a request that this sentence be entered under the First Offender Act, and the court will approve that request, withhold adjudication. But I must notify you, Ms. Powell, that you are not allowed to withdraw your plea simply because you do not comply with the terms of the sentence. And the terms of that sentence would be as recommended by the parties. On count 1, conspiracy to commit intentional interference with the performance of election duties, the sentence would be 12 months probation. And counts 2 through 6 would also be 12 months probation consecutive to each other and to count 1 for a total term of essentially 6 years probation, but we're going to translate that into months for the sentence sheet. Special conditions would include a $6,000 fine with $1,000 for each count. Restitution to be paid in the amount of $2,700 to the Georgia Secretary of State's office. You are to have written a letter, which you've already satisfied. You're also to provide a recorded proffer with the state, which you've already satisfied. You're to testify truthfully against any and all co-defendants in this matter at any upcoming proceedings. You are not to have any communication with any witness. any co-defendant or any member of the media concerning the facts or circumstances of this case, and you to provide all documents to the district attorney's office as requested and relevant to this case.
You know, this whole ordeal right here of Donald Trump saying, she's not my lawyer, I don't know her, she's one of millions of people, that is quintessential liar, weak Donald Trump, disgraceful Donald Trump, traitor Donald Trump. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Hit subscribe if you want to support this independent media network and stories just like this. Go to patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MeidasTouch. Have a great day.
At MeidasTouch, we are unapologetically pro-democracy, and we demand justice and accountability. That's why we're spreading our message to Convict 45. That's right, gear up right now with your Convict 45 tees and pins at store.MeidasTouch.com. That's store.MeidasTouch.com.